Okay. So I've been in the workforce for a little over 4 years now, and I've done recruitment in some capacity for all 4 of those years. So I've seen a lot of various resumes, done a lot of interviews, and here are my tips for how to be successful in those environments. So for resumes, there are three kind of big downfalls that I look for when reviewing resumes. The first is vagueness. So when people are not specific about their experiences, um, that can be tough as a recruiter to know sort of fully who they are, what kind of skills they have, and it can make it hard to offer them a follow-up interview. So, for example, if you have on your resume, quote, worked in a collaborative team environment to achieve goals, that's great. That's a wonderful skill to have. But me as a recruiter, I'm not inclined to believe you if you don't back that up with some type of specifics about the work collaboration. So something better to say would be, uh, in my line of work, software development, you could say worked in an agile Scrum environment that spanned development and quality assurance teams to meet a monthly software release cadence. Something like that has specifics to it. Me as a recruiter can see some methodologies you've used, how often you do collaboration, what type of teams it's on. Providing that kind of detail is a good way to leave a mark in a recruiter's mind. Another tip that I have is to avoid white space. So white space is kind of the more white space you have, the less content you have. It's inversely related. So if I, as a recruiter, see that there's a lot of white space on your resume, subconsciously and consciously, my first impression is, oh, there's not enough stuff to fill this, which is not typically what you're looking for in recruitment. You want someone who has had a lot of experience, or if they haven't had a lot of experience, they can speak well to the experiences that they've had. So that doesn't mean you should pack it as tightly as humanly possible. I usually like to give it the blurry eye test. So if you squint, do you see any major sort of white blocks on the page that indicate that more information could be provided to help a recruiter? The last resume downfall that I see is old stuff. So uh, I think a rule of thumb is anything older than 5 years on your resume should really be candidates for removal or being extremely pared down. So that means, if you're in college, especially later college, you probably should not have any high school stuff on there. Even if you did amazing things in high school, it's just not something recruiters tend to look for. If you're later into your career, having stuff from early career is okay to mention, but especially in the STEM world, technologies and methods change so frequently. Having a 15-year-old job experience on there with the languages you used, it's not going to be all that relevant to the market today for job hunters. So those are my three resume downfalls and tips. Hopefully those can help you refine your resumes and get them to make good impressions on recruiters. The other tips I have are for interviews. So I've done probably over 100 interviews at this point um, with recruitment with my company. And I think that there are two things that always, always, always make a candidate stand out. And this is regardless of sort of their technical proficiency, regardless of their resume, regardless of um, how well the coding challenge goes. These two tips can make up for a lot of maybe shortcomings in those areas. So the first one is know your company. When you walk into an interview, you should have as much knowledge about that company as humanly possible to acquire without visiting the company. So you should know their mission statement, you should know their industry, you should know some of their products, you should know, maybe some of their leadership if you can, and look at their leadership's history. Any type of information that could come up organically in the conversation is is absolutely worth knowing. So myself, I work for an aerospace software company. And when people come in and say, "Oh, your software products are really cool. I watched a demo video. I was really inspired by the fidelity of the graphics, and I'd love to learn more about that." Those types of things as a recruiter make me go, "Awesome. This person's interested. We're not just, another spaghetti on the wall. Someone's trying to get a job to stick. This is someone who wants to work for us." That goes such a long way. The other interview tip I have is to interview your interviewer. So as a recruiter, we are interviewing candidates, but there's also a reverse interview process happening at the same time. Candidates are trying to find a company that works for them. Um, it's important to ask as many questions as you have allotted time for. Questions about the work, about the company culture, about work-life balance, about processes and procedures that the company has. You can ask about what the company's vision of the future is. Um, any and all questions like that go a long way in showing a recruiter that you are interested in matching yourself with the right company, because no recruiter wants to hire somebody who doesn't seem like they want to work for the company. So those are my two interview tips: know your company and interview the interviewer. And my three resume tips were, or my three resume downfalls are vagueness, white space, and old stuff. So hopefully this helps, and happy job hunting.